I used to believe that the harder I worked, the more I could earn my parents' love. That if I just kept proving myself, top of the class, scholarship, stable job, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at my sister Perry, like I was worth loving. But love in our house came with receipts, and I was always the one expected to pay. I'm Lucas Tran. I'm 28 years old, and if you ask anyone who knows me, they'll probably describe me as successful. A steady job in tech, clean credit, zero drama. But they don't know that I've been living someone else's life for the last 10 years. One I didn't choose, one I was guilt-tripped into. My parents, Charles and Linda Tran, came to the US as immigrants, working back-breaking jobs in a nail salon and a commercial kitchen for decades. We didn't have a lot growing up, but we weren't destitute either. Still, they made sure I understood from as early as I could comprehend words that I owed them. For everything. Don't forget where you come from, Dad would say every time I mentioned wanting to go out of state for college. We sacrificed everything for you, Mom would echo, usually after handing me a bowl of instant noodles and reminding me to study harder than the white kids at school. They weren't evil. They were just programmed. Their own parents had raised them the same way. Love is discipline and respect is silence. But somehow Perry never had to live under those rules. Perry, my younger sister by 3 years, was the sun to my storm. She didn't have to clean. She didn't have to study. When I asked for new school shoes, I had to write out the reasons why I deserved them. When she asked, she had them the next day in pink, glittery boxes. At first, I thought it was because she was the youngest. Then I thought it was because she was a girl. But eventually I realized, my parents simply loved her more. Not in the surface level, we love all our children kind of way. In the real, painful, bone-deep kind of way that shows up in every decision, every conversation, every choice. Still, I did what was expected. I studied. I got into a decent tech school. When they couldn't afford the tuition, I offered to take out a student loan. Dad shut that down immediately. Loans are for people who give up, he snapped. You think we work this hard so you can owe strangers money? So they cashed out their savings instead, quietly without discussion. I remember feeling both proud and terrified. Grateful. It seemed like such a sacrifice. I promised myself I'd make it up to them someday. After graduation, I landed a solid job with benefits and a 401k. Within a year, I was making more than they ever had combined. I bought a used car. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the office. On the surface, things were going well. But every visit home came with reminders. Subtle at first. We gave up everything for you, Dad would say as I set the table for dinner. Your mother has back pain from all those extra shifts just to pay your tuition, Mom would add while stirring soup. And then one night, over grilled pork and jasmine rice, Dad looked up and said, "It's time you bought us a house." Just like that. No discussion. No easing into it. No, "Do you think you're ready?" Just a statement. A command wrapped in the guilt of years past. "You have a good job now," Mom chimed in, wiping her hands on a napkin. "You're doing well. It's time." I nodded because that's what I'd been trained to do. What else could I say? But after everything they'd done for me, I didn't even pause to ask myself if I wanted to. Want wasn't part of the equation. Duty was. Within 3 months, I signed a mortgage on a modest 2-bedroom house on the east side of Austin. Nothing fancy, just clean, newish, and within my budget. I chose it carefully, thinking of their knees, their backs, the walking distance to the Asian market they liked. I paid for the inspection, the down payment, the closing costs. I set up automatic monthly transfers. The title stayed in my name. Or so I thought. On move-in day they cried. My mom hugged me like I just cured cancer. My dad clapped me on the back and said, "Now we're proud of you." Funny how pride always came after a payment. At the time I felt a little tired but mostly relieved. I'd done what they asked. I was a good son. I didn't realize I had just bought my own betrayal. I didn't find out right away. For the first few months after my parents moved in, everything was surprisingly quiet. I still visited once or twice a week. Mostly out of habit, partly out of guilt. Mom always made my favorite dishes. Dad would offer me beer I didn't drink. They acted content. Grateful. Sometimes too grateful. Like they were overcompensating for something I couldn't yet see. At the time I thought they were just happy. That maybe for once I'd done the right thing. Then one Tuesday afternoon I stopped by on my lunch break. Mom had called earlier, saying the pipes under the kitchen sink were acting up. I had a plumber on call from work, so I figured I'd swing by and have a look myself. The problem wasn't the pipes. I found it on the counter. A thick, freshly mailed envelope from the county clerk's office. I didn't think much of it until I saw the return address. Travis County Property Division. Something in my gut twisted. I opened it. Inside were copies of property transfer documents, signed, stamped, and filed. The house, the one I had spent tens of thousands on, the one I was still making monthly mortgage payments for, was now registered under my sister's name. Perry Tran. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. A clerical error. Maybe they'd mixed up our names? I was the one on the mortgage, the title, the insurance. I was the owner. But the paperwork said otherwise. Even had a date. Just 2 weeks after the housewarming dinner. 2 weeks. While I was still bringing over furniture. While I was still paying. I sat there staring at the documents, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. My first call was to the mortgage company. My name, they confirmed, was still on the loan. That part hadn't changed. Which meant I was still responsible for the payments, even if I no longer legally owned the home. My second call was to my dad. He picked up like nothing was wrong. "Lucas. Everything okay?" "No," I said, barely keeping my voice steady. "Did you sign over the house to Perry?" There was a long pause. I heard the shuffling of papers, a door closing. Then his voice dropped an octave. "Why are you asking that?" "Because I have the documents, Dad. It's in her name. You forged my signature." Another pause. This one longer. Then unbelievably he chuckled. "Son, don't be dramatic. It's all in the family. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I froze. That one sentence sent a heat through my body I didn't know I was capable of feeling. Not because of the words, but because of how casually he said them. Like what he'd done wasn't fraud. Like it wasn't betrayal. Like it wasn't theft. "What do you mean, nothing?" I said. "I'm still paying for that house. I bought it. You." He cut me off. "And who paid for your education, Lucas? Who skipped vacations for you? Who worked double shifts so you could have a future? This is how families work. We support each other." I wanted to scream. But I hung up. I called Perry next. She didn't answer. I texted her. "Did you know the house is in your name?" 10 minutes later I got a reply. "Dad said you gave it to me as a gift." "You really didn't." I stared at the screen, stunned. Then came the next text. "I've already moved all my things into the master bedroom." Of course she had. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat in my apartment, surrounded by bills, scrolling through every transaction, every receipt. The down payment. The utilities. The furniture. All under my name. All mine. And yet none of it was. The next morning I drove to the house, parked down the street, and watched through the windshield as Perry pulled in. She bounced out of her car wearing yoga pants and a new coat, smiling like the world was exactly as it should be. My parents followed close behind, carrying grocery bags, laughing. Not a single glance back toward me. It was like I never existed. There's a specific kind of silence that wraps around you when you realize your presence has become optional in your own family. It's not loud, not violent. It's just empty. Like a room that used to have meaning, now stripped bare. That's what I felt the week after the discovery. Like I was a ghost haunting a house that was never mine to begin with. I stopped going over. Stopped replying to texts. When Dad called the next weekend asking if I could come help hang curtains in Perry's place, I told him I had a work thing. He didn't push. Didn't ask if I was okay. Just said, "All right. Maybe next time," and hung up. I waited. Waited for some sort of follow-up. An apology. Even a half-hearted "you misunderstood." But nothing came. Days passed. Then weeks. No one reached out. In the silence I started replaying everything. Every childhood memory. Every time they made me skip birthday parties to study. Every time Perry cried and they dropped everything while I sat quietly in the corner with scraped knees and no one noticed. I remembered the way Dad used to smile when Perry showed him a crayon drawing like it was a Picasso, but barely glanced at the science trophies I brought home. I remembered Mom telling me after I got my first job offer, "Make sure you take care of your sister too." It all clicked. I'd been trained, groomed even, to be the provider, the backup plan, the insurance policy, and like a fool I'd played along. But something shifted in me. That cold clarity, the kind that settles when disappointment has burned away every last ember of hope. I stopped paying the mortgage. I didn't make a scene. Didn't send angry texts or file lawsuits. Yet. I just quietly turned off the autopay. The bank would take a couple of months before issuing warnings, and I wanted to see just how long it would take them to notice. I figured once the letters started coming they'd call me, beg, apologize, maybe even offer to transfer the house back. But weeks passed. Then another month. Nothing. I was still legally tied to the loan, so I monitored the account. I watched as missed payments started stacking. I imagined Perry sipping her oat milk latte on the porch, blissfully unaware that the roof over her head was about to become a liability. Not hers. Mine. During that time I reconnected with someone I hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. Emily. She was my ex. We'd dated back in college before life got heavy. She'd always told me my family drained me, that I gave too much and asked for too little. Back then I thought she just didn't understand filial duty. But now she felt like the only person who ever had. We met for coffee. I told her everything. At first she looked horrified. Then she leaned back, crossed her arms and said, "Lucas, your parents don't love you. They love what you do for them." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He was right. Later that night, sitting alone in my apartment, I opened a new spreadsheet. Not for work but for myself. I listed every dollar I'd put into that house. The down payment, insurance, maintenance, utilities, even the grocery runs. The total made me physically nauseous. I could have used that money for my own place. A down payment on a condo downtown. A new car. A trip to Europe. Instead, I'd bought invisibility. The following week, I received a text from Mom. Just a single line. "Perry needs help setting up the Wi-Fi. Can you come?" No. "How are you?" No, "We miss you." Just a command. Like I was the family tech support. I didn't reply. A day later, Dad sent a group message. "We're having dinner this Sunday. Family only. Hope to see you." I stared at the words, family only. As if I wasn't already on the outside. As if I wasn't the one keeping the lights on, at least until recently. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going back. Not to the house. Not to them. Not to the version of me who thought being a good son meant sacrificing everything, even my dignity. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But peace, I was learning, sometimes requires you to burn bridges you once prayed to cross. I got the invitation in the mail. Not a text. Not a phone call. A printed, glitter-covered invitation with gold-embossed letters spelling out Perry's 26th birthday bash. Like it was a royal coronation. The party was to be held at her house. My house. The house I had paid for, furnished, fixed, and had recently watched slip through my fingers like sand. I turned the envelope over in my hand several times, debating whether to go. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Another part, the angry, simmering, unforgiving part, wanted to see exactly what I'd bought for someone who never had to earn a damn thing in her life. When I arrived, the first thing I saw was a banner over the gate that read, "Perry's Palace," in cursive script. There were fairy lights strung from the porch to the trees. A catered bar on the front lawn. A live DJ blasting top 40 hits into the quiet suburban air. Dozens of people buzzed around, most of them younger, laughing, posing for pictures, clinking glasses. I stood at the edge of the driveway, gripping the envelope in my pocket. Inside was a copy of the property records and 3 past-due mortgage notices addressed to me. I spotted my parents by the food table. Dad wore a Hawaiian shirt and loafers, holding a drink like he was king of the block. Mom was fussing over a dessert tray, smiling like the world was perfectly in order. Perry was in the center of it all, wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than my rent, posing next to a balloon arch that spelled her name. I stepped onto the lawn. No one noticed at first. But when Perry saw me, her smile froze for a second. Then she gave a little wave like I was just another guest. Just another extra in the movie of her life. I didn't wave back. Instead, I walked to the center of the lawn, pulled the microphone from the DJ stand and said, "Sorry to interrupt. I have a little gift for the birthday girl." Everyone turned. The music cut. The air shifted. Perry blinked, confused. My parents stiffened. I pulled out the papers and held them up. "This house," I said, "was purchased with my money. Every cent of it. The down payment. The furniture. The maintenance. All paid by me. But Perry somehow ended up with her name on the deed. Strange, right?" There were murmurs. Gasps. Someone recorded with their phone. Mom rushed forward, hissing, "Lucas, don't do this here." I ignored her. The mortgage, still in my name. So while you're all sipping champagne on the patio, guess who's been footing the bill for Perry's palace? Surprise. Me. Perry stepped forward, her voice shaky. I thought you gave it to me. Dad said it was a gift. I looked her straight in the eyes. Did you ever ask? Did you ever wonder how your name magically appeared on legal documents you never signed? She didn't answer. Dad tried to grab the mic, but I stepped back. I stopped paying the mortgage 2 months ago. I figured if you were going to steal the house, you should try paying for it too. Mom's voice trembled. You can't be serious. I turned to her slowly. I've never been more serious in my life. A ripple of silence spread across the yard. Perry looked pale. Her friends started backing away. And then came the final blow. My last line before I handed the mic back to the stunned DJ. This house will be seized and auctioned within 60 days unless the payments are made. Good luck, birthday girl. I walked off the lawn as the chaos began to unfold behind me. Mom crying, Dad yelling, Perry shouting my name. But I didn't turn around. I got into my car, closed the door, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel like the invisible son. I felt like someone who mattered. For a while I heard nothing. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a passive-aggressive email. Just silence. A few friends who still had ties to the neighborhood told me the birthday party fell apart the moment I walked off the lawn. Guests left early. The DJ packed up before his second set. Some said Perry locked herself in her room and refused to come out for 2 days. Others claimed she threw her cake at the kitchen wall. Honestly, I didn't care enough to verify. But 2 weeks later I got a notification from the bank. The third consecutive missed payment had triggered a formal foreclosure warning. They would seize the property within 45 days unless the account was brought current. My name was still on the loan, but now the legal consequences were their problem. I had already spoken to a lawyer, and while the ownership transfer had been forged, pursuing a legal case against my parents would drag on for years and cost me more emotionally than I was willing to give. So instead, I took a different path. I filed a quitclaim deed, removing myself from the title entirely, and formally notified the bank that I had no interest in the property anymore. They would still chase me for missed payments, sure, but the house? It wasn't mine to fight for anymore. 3 weeks after that, the bank began formal proceedings. Notices were taped to the front door. A yellow envelope hung under the mailbox like a death certificate. Perry finally called me, sobbing, begging me to fix it. Please, Lucas. I didn't know this would happen. I thought Dad had it under control. Her voice cracked. Ben left. He said he can't marry someone who lies about money. Ben. Her fiancé. The guy who had smiled at me with mild indifference during her party. The one who wore loafers with no socks and talked about NFTs at dinner. Gone. I didn't yell. I didn't say, I told you so. I just listened, then said, you're an adult now, Perry. It's time to live like one. Then I hung up. A week later I got a voicemail from my father. His voice was gravel. The house is gone. They auctioned it. You think you've won? You've disgraced us. You've turned your back on your family. He ended with, we'll never forgive you. That was the last message I received from either of my parents. I later found out they moved into a small apartment near the East Freeway. Perry moved in with them. He started working at a bakery. Mom picked up part-time hours at a dry cleaner. Dad started driving for a rideshare company. Life had changed. For all of them. As for me, I moved too. But in a different way. I found a small loft in downtown Austin. Nothing fancy, but mine, entirely mine. No debt. No lingering shadows of ungrateful expectations. I paid the down payment with savings I'd been quietly moving out of my old accounts, away from the ones Dad used to help manage when I was in school. I bought my own furniture piece by piece. Each item chosen not for utility or obligation but for comfort. For me. Emily helped with the move. We weren't officially back together. But something about the way she carried boxes and stayed long after the heavy lifting was done told me she wasn't going anywhere. One night as we unpacked, she held up a photo frame I didn't recognize. Inside was a picture of me as a kid, probably around 8, sitting on a worn couch, clutching a cheap plastic toy. My eyes were tired. My mouth was trying to smile. She looked at the picture, then at me. You've been giving since you were that little. I nodded. But now, she said, placing the frame gently on the shelf. It's your turn to take. We toasted with 2 mugs of instant ramen and watched the city lights flicker through the windows. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something better. Free. It had been nearly 6 months since I'd cut them off. 6 months of silence, of unreturned messages and unopened emails. I'd thought they'd gotten the message, that this time I wasn't going to cave. Then one Thursday morning a new email popped into my inbox. The subject line read, "Your mother is sick." The sender was my father. I hovered over it for nearly an hour before opening it. Inside, the message was brief, almost cold. "Your mother has been diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 3. We need to begin treatment immediately. The insurance doesn't cover much. Call me." That was it. No greeting. No, "I hope you're well." No apology. Just a request for money wrapped in a tragedy. I didn't call. A day later I got a voicemail from Perry. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Lucas, I know you probably hate me, but this is real. Mom's really sick. She needs chemo, surgery, radiation. All of it. We can't afford it. Please, even if you don't care about us, she's still your mother." I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the floor, letting her words roll around in my head like marbles in an empty jar. The weight of them should have broken something in me. But it didn't. Instead, I felt numb. Tired. Hollow. I wasn't made of stone. I still remembered her cooking my favorite soup when I had the flu in high school, or the way she used to brush my hair out of my eyes during long study nights. But those moments had been eclipsed by others. So many others. Moments where I was just the means to an end. Even now she wasn't calling me. She hadn't picked up the phone. She hadn't sent a message of her own. She had sent Perry. He had sent Dad. She had sent the problem. So I called them. Not to say yes. Not to send a check. But to look them in the eyes one more time. They invited me to the hospital. It was smaller than I expected. Underfunded. Dim. Perry met me in the lobby and led me down the hallway like we were strangers forced into a shared scene. When I entered the room, Mom looked up slowly. Her hair had begun to thin. She was paler, thinner. But her eyes, those hadn't changed. They still held that sharp, calculated gleam I remembered. "Lucas," she said softly. "You came." "I did," I said, pulling a chair up to the side of the bed. There was a moment of silence before she reached for my hand. I didn't take it. "We need your help," she said, her voice fragile but rehearsed. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. "The treatment costs over $200,000. The hospital wants upfront confirmation of payment for the full course. You're the only one who can make that happen." There was not "we miss you," not "we're sorry," just a price tag. I looked at my father. "You told me once I was born out of duty. That I owed you. That I should be grateful for existing." He didn't deny it. I turned to my mother. "Do you remember when you signed over the house to Perry without telling me? Do you remember forging my signature?" Her face tightened. "We did what we had to do for the family." "No," I said. "You did what you had to do for Perry." She looked away. I stood. "I'm sorry you're sick. I truly am. But I won't be used again. Not even for this." Dad stepped forward, his voice rising. "Don't do this. Don't abandon your mother in her time of need." "I didn't abandon anyone," I said, already heading for the door. "You pushed me out a long time ago. You just never thought I'd stay gone." Perry followed me out into the hallway. Her eyes were red. "Lucas, please. Don't let her die thinking you never forgave her." I turned to her slowly. "I didn't come here for forgiveness," I said. "I came to say goodbye." Then I walked away, this time for good. The weeks after the hospital visit were quieter than I expected. No more voicemails. No more emails. No more pleas. For a while I wondered if they'd finally accepted my silence. Or maybe they were too busy scrambling for alternatives. Loans, GoFundMe campaigns, charity applications. Whatever it was, I wasn't part of the plan anymore. And for the first time in my life I was okay with that. But then one afternoon a letter arrived. Not electronic. Handwritten. Neatly folded in a plain envelope. No return address, just my name in Mom's cursive. For a long time I didn't open it. I left it on the counter, unopened, for nearly a week. But curiosity, or maybe some lingering shred of attachment, got the better of me. The letter wasn't long. "Lucas, you were always the strong one. The quiet one. The one who endured. I didn't realize how much we leaned on you until the ground gave out from under us. Your father is angry. Perry is confused. And I am tired. If you choose not to help, I understand. But I hope you know it was never hate. We didn't know how to love you the right way. Maybe we never will. I just hope that when I'm gone, you don't remember only the worst of me. Love. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it back up, placed it in a drawer, and walked away. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't feel the catharsis people talk about when their pain is acknowledged. Because it wasn't an apology, it was a soft admission, dipped in regret, but still framed around their feelings. Their exhaustion. Their sorrow. Their confusion. Not once did she ask what it had done to me. So I wrote a letter back. But I didn't send it to them. I sent it to myself. And then I shared it with someone who needed to hear it more than anyone. Emily. We were sitting on her balcony, the city humming beneath us, when I pulled it out. You wrote something? She asked gently. I nodded. It's not for them. It's for me. She didn't speak. Just listened. I began reading. Dear Mom, Dad, and Perry. I didn't walk away because of money. Or property. Or because I wanted revenge. I walked away because I finally realized the version of love you offered came with conditions I could no longer meet. You taught me that love had to be earned, that duty came before happiness, and that silence was respect. But that's not love. That's fear wrapped in tradition. I spent most of my life trying to make you proud. But the cost was losing myself. And I'm done trading pieces of my soul for crumbs of approval. I wish you peace. I wish you healing. But I will not be returning. Not because I hate you, but because I finally love myself more. When I finished, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes told me enough. We sat there until the sun dipped behind the skyline, the world slowly surrendering to dusk. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt light. Not happy necessarily, but unburdened. I had let go. Not out of anger, but out of mercy, for them and for myself. 1 year later, I barely recognized the man I used to be. Not just in the mirror, though I had changed there too, but in the stillness of my thoughts. In the way I walked down the street without feeling like I owed something to someone. In the way I didn't flinch when I passed by homes that looked like the one I used to pay for. In the way I woke up each morning and didn't brace myself for a demand disguised as duty. Emily and I moved in together last spring. It wasn't planned exactly. It just made sense. Her lease was up, I had space, and we both found comfort in the shared silence that came with healing. We didn't rush anything. There was no talk of rings or labels. Just 2 people finally learning what it meant to exist without needing permission. The loft had become a sanctuary. We'd painted the walls ourselves. Midnight blue in the bedroom, warm ivory in the living room. Emily filled the kitchen with plants and I installed smart lights she never used. We had a corner bookshelf packed with things we actually wanted to read, and a record player that made weekend mornings feel like we lived in another era. One Saturday she brought out the old letter I'd read to her. She'd saved it, tucked neatly into the back of a journal. You ever think about sending it? She asked. I shook my head. No. I already lived it. She smiled and handed me something else. A card, sealed and unmarked. What's this? Open it. Inside was a single printed quote. Not everyone you love will love you right. But you can always love yourself better. No signature. No explanation. Just truth. We sat for a while in the quiet that followed. Not the kind that used to hang in my parents' house. Tense, weighty, always on the edge of expectation, but a different kind. Peaceful. Earned. Sometimes I still got updates about them. My aunt texted once to say Mom's treatment had gone well. She was in remission. Perry had moved out and started a graphic design course. Dad still refused to speak my name. I thanked her for the update and left it at that. There was no reunion. No emotional final scene. No last-minute apologies or dramatic confessions. Just distance. A space between us that had once been filled with obligation, now replaced by quiet freedom. I didn't hate them. I wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was something gentler. Sadness maybe. For what could have been. For the version of our story that never got written. But mostly I felt grateful. Because losing them had given me back myself. And in that self I found everything I'd ever needed. I sometimes think about that house, the one they called Perry's Palace. I wonder what it looks like now. Someone else lives there. If they painted over the soft gray walls I once chose so carefully. I hope whoever's there knows what it means to own something not just with your money, but with your heart. I hope they love it without being expected to bleed for it. One evening, Emily and I hosted a few friends at the loft. Nothing fancy. Just wine, laughter, the smell of garlic and rosemary. At some point, someone asked how I managed to walk away from everything. My family, that house, the weight of it all. I thought for a moment, then replied simply, because I realized staying would cost me more than leaving ever did. That answer hung in the air longer than I expected. A few people nodded. One woman teared up. No one asked more. Later that night, after everyone left, Emily leaned into me on the couch and said, "You know, I'm proud of you." "For what?" I asked, smiling. "For being brave enough to start over. For not letting your past dictate your future." I kissed the top of her head. "You helped." She shook her head. "No, Lucas. You chose." And she was right. I had chosen peace over performance, clarity over guilt, self-worth over servitude. And in doing so, I had written my own ending, quiet, steady, and entirely mine.